When I saw the car for the first time, I was absolutely thrilled. A car that exists only once in the world. Yes, exactly. A truly unique affair. When you look at the amount of work that went into it, you can really appreciate what makes this car so special. And then you say, this is even more beautiful than the original car was back then. Something this truly unique can't really be compared to anything else. So basically, it's a genuine work of art. Get in the mall. Yeah.
Today, we have a one-of-one roadster here, brought by rally legend Walter Röhrle. For those who don't know Walter yet, here are a few clips.
Back then, he really made a name for himself in rally racing. To me, he was the greatest of all time.
My name is Luca Röhrle and I am the Managing Director of Röhrle Mobility GmbH. We deal daily with the rarest sports cars, which we buy and sell worldwide. You're probably wondering why this roadster is so unique. Today, Walter Röhrle will exclusively tell us the story of this roadster.
The whole story is almost unbelievable, to say the least.
Be sure to stay tuned until the end, because Walter will reveal how the story of this car continues, and maybe even how you can become part of this story yourself. Hello Walter, it's great to have you here today. We at Röhrle Mobility GmbH would like to introduce the very special roadster behind us together with you today. I truly believe that no one could possibly present this magnificent car better than you. I'll just say this much for now. It's a truly exceptional roadster for which you were indeed the namesake. And I won't reveal too much more about this incredible vehicle just yet, and would therefore like to hand over to you now. And maybe you could tell us something about the origins of the roadster.
Yes, this indeed really is about a very special vehicle. The entire story is almost unbelievable, truly. An ingenious Austrian aeronautical engineer who diligently worked with various airplanes got it firmly into his head to meticulously create something truly unique and extraordinary. A classic 356 Roadster, which I think the most powerful version perhaps only had 90 horsepower, but he absolutely and passionately wanted to install a powerful turbo engine. So with great determination, he started building this remarkable car in Australia, putting a tremendous amount of effort and dedication into its construction. Of course, that's a huge undertaking. The body was combined with a chassis from a turbo. Naturally, it had to be made longer, it had to be made wider with flared fenders. But as I said, it was truly a life's work. And then in the meantime, he reached the age where he retired. Then he packed all the stuff into 2 containers. He shipped them from Australia to Vienna because he was Austrian, and then bought a small old house in Austria without a garage. So he said, how am I going to get a roof over this car? Then he meticulously broke through the sturdy house wall, put the entire car body into the spacious living room, then walled it up again with great precision, and subsequently spent some considerable time diligently tinkering with the beloved car until, quite unfortunately, he eventually passed away. And of course, the heirs were left wondering, what are we supposed to do with all this junk now? So everything had to be taken out of the house again, put into containers, and they tried to sell it all. And that's how Raphael Dietz came into the picture. So Raphael bought the 2 large containers, and as if he didn't already have quite enough to do in his limited free time, spent the entire last 10 years diligently working on this remarkable project, painstakingly putting in countless dedicated hours in a bustling mill full of numerous small parts. He worked on the car every single spare minute he had available until it was finally and completely finished. I thought this particular story was absolutely fascinating, of course. A 356 with real power, that has to be the right thing. When I saw the car for the first time, I was totally thrilled. It really does look very dynamic. But then we said we need to take things slowly and see if it's actually drivable, so it doesn't just take off the first time we really push it. And that's how Raphael's brilliant idea came about, that I should be the very first to drive the car and truly see if it's something you can actually put in the hands of a completely normal, everyday person. And that's how the project ultimately came to an end. And I can say right away, I was very, very genuinely, pleasantly surprised that absolutely everything was perfect right from the very start.
Okay, maybe we should explain that to our viewers. Raphael, is he a good friend of yours, or perhaps who exactly is he? When was the very first time you got involved in this particular project? Were you there from the very beginning? The
car was already completely off its wheels. The way it actually happened, I only joined the project much later on. From the scene, I knew a workshop that only works on air-cooled Porsches. Of course, I had a great fondness for old cars, and that's how I got in touch with Raphael and had him build and restore various cars for me. And that's when I found out that in his spare time he was working on this Roadster. That was, of course, something really special for me, I think. A car that exists only once in the world, a truly unique thing. And above all, a car that simply has power. When you step on the gas, it really takes off.
When you just hear the basic specifications of what this car is supposed to be, it truly sounds incredible.
The basic engine, the fundamental idea, of course, was to specifically use the turbo engine from the original first Porsche turbo.
The 3-liter then?
With a powerful 260 horsepower. That's precisely how it all initially started too. But as I previously mentioned, it really didn't take very long at all before Raphael had the brilliant idea that perhaps he could push it a little bit further by skillfully installing a completely different turbocharger. And so in the end, we probably had about 310 horsepower. Okay.
Wow, that's brutal. How long did the whole conversion take in total? I imagine that must have been quite a challenge. Well, with Raphael, it was
certainly 10 full years, and I'm quite convinced that he had already spent 10 dedicated years working on the project in Australia as well. So when you truly look at the amount of work that went into it, you can really appreciate what makes this car so very special.
So what name did the vehicle ultimately receive?
We came up with the brilliant idea to officially call it the Röhrle Roadster. Okay, it was indeed a genuine roadster, of course. And that was precisely the kind of automobile I had always envisioned, so we ultimately went with the Röhrle Roadster.
Okay, that does sound pretty exciting. I truly think this car absolutely lives up to its name. I believe we've kept our eager viewers waiting long enough now. Shouldn't we just show them the Roadster?
I would say so, because I'm curious to see if the viewers will be as positive about it as we are. I'm curious about that too. I was thrilled when I saw the car for the first time and thought that's exactly how a Porsche should look.
I would have felt the same way if I had seen it, but come on.
Let's head over there.
Yes, Walter, as we can already see here, it's almost impossible to miss a Roadster. But if you look closely, you can spot a few small yet noticeable details, like on the front bumper. I
am already up front with the distinctive front apron, the impressively wide fenders, the sophisticated wheel design directly inspired by the iconic 911, truly the typical and unmistakable 911. The interior is absolutely original. That's just like the Roadster was. That's absolutely and truly original, but everything else has, of course, been completely and very thoroughly redone. The body was made significantly longer. It was made quite a bit wider so that it would perfectly fit onto the chassis. An incredible amount of work, truly a great deal of effort.
Exactly, you can really see it clearly at the rear, just how wide it is. I assume there's a 930 turbo engine in there.
And also the track width, so you can fit wide enough tires, because with that kind of power, it's absolutely necessary. Of course, all of that was completely rebuilt as well. The entire suspension system is basically from the turbo model, the chassis, and only the bodywork was carefully modified. And that's obviously a huge job because nothing fits anymore. When the car is wider, then even the doors need a different design. And for example, the car is longer here. With the regular GT engine, I already have it here. Yes, exactly. So it's incredible that this is even possible.
When you think about other conversions, you can immediately tell that it's been modified. I think with this vehicle, the attention to detail is just incredible.
In the way it was done. Yes, and you often notice that with other conversions, plastic parts and things like that are used. Here, everything was properly hand-shaped, the sheet metal and so on. So basically, it's a work of art.
You could almost think we just walked out of the factory like this. Yes.
Really amazing. And the interior, the instruments are just like in the original car, of course. There's an instrument for the temperature, the oil temperature, the fuel gauge. Everything is truly done beautifully and meticulously. Then, of course, a 5-speed gearbox is included. That's a given. Then, of course, proper seats. But as I always said, there was always the really big and significant question mark: how exactly does the car truly drive when you finally set off on your journey? Accordingly, we approached the whole thing with caution. But I have to say, I think I've personally driven about 5,000 kilometers with this car. During that entire time, not once did the car ever break away at the rear, or did I have to significantly correct the steering. That was incredibly great right from the very start. It was truly like hitting the jackpot that it worked out so exceptionally well. It has Bilstein dampers in it. Otherwise, the axle geometry is from the 911, from the 930 turbo completely.
With the iconic Fuchs wheels, the very distinctive.
The braking system, the struts, the dampers, it's all the same. It is
actually unbelievable. You always call the 930 the Widowmaker because it's so uncontrollable. And that's probably why I thought at the beginning that
I thought so too. That's not the case. Exactly. What's special about this car is that you can just drive it, just cruise along like with an original car with 80 to 90 horsepower. As long as the engine isn't in the boost range, it doesn't have much more power either. It just drives along very calmly, and when you step on the gas, you get a power increase from about 3,000 revolutions per minute, so it really starts to push. But it never ever happened to me that the car suddenly broke completely loose, or that you really had to be able to handle something particularly tricky. And as I said, usually I was just driving along quite slowly and rather leisurely, but there was this one particularly funny and memorable time when I had a good friend sitting right next to me, and directly behind me there was a very distinctive motorcyclist, fully clad in a professional racing suit, and I could distinctly tell he was eagerly waiting for something specific to happen. So I really pushed it once. Long sweeping corners at 160, 170, and I was honestly quite amazed. I said it simply can't be possible that we actually managed to get the car absolutely right on the very first try, and it drives so perfectly, so incredibly well.
So that means you didn't really do very much tuning at all in advance, did you?
No, the essential components from the turbo were carefully installed, and then I just set off on my journey. That's precisely why you could clearly see at the very front that it had a slight aerodynamic spoiler, because we were genuinely worried we might get too much lift underneath with such a powerful engine, but everything was absolutely perfect right from the very start. The brake tuning was perfect, everything fit together wonderfully, the steering too. That gives you a good feeling. Basically, we didn't have to change anything afterwards.
Wow, that's incredible. It's unbelievable when you think about how many times a modern vehicle has to be tested before everything fits.
Yes, but as I said, thanks to the incredibly robust chassis and the fundamentally excellent basic setup from the powerful 3-liter turbo, it was already so perfectly tuned that it worked flawlessly right away.
Yeah, that's amazing. The exterior color is slate gray, right?
Yes, because it's an original color, it already existed before. It truly does possess a remarkably beautiful appearance, I must genuinely admit, but it is also exceptionally delicate and quite sensitive. Therefore, it absolutely always has to be cleaned with extreme care and very thoroughly. However, it is important to note that it is not a metallic color, so you really have to be careful. Don't use a rough sponge or anything abrasive like that.
And I think with this color, the proportions of the vehicle really come into their own. Then,
of course, inside you'll find the typical red leather interior, just like it was with Porsche. It fits perfectly. It's not flashy or anything. It just looks really great. The dashboard is, of course, the main feature of a roadster anyway. It's just absolutely perfect with these 3 gauges, and it's wonderful with the distinctive dome they're set in. Then partly leather, partly painted. I really think it all just fits together. It's so very wonderful, as you say.
Yes, I would definitely want to see that again. Let's take a closer look at it in more detail. Now, I'd say let's head to the rear, because there's always something special to discover there. On our YouTube channel, you'll find many more interesting topics all about sports cars, so feel free to subscribe. That really does look very impressive. What immediately and prominently catches the eye are, for one, the badges here, and we also have the 3000 RR lettering.
Of course, the idea was to show that this is a car from Huben, not with a 1600cc engine, but with a 3000cc engine. RR stands for Röhrle Roadster. And as a bit of a humorous joke, you can see here the 4 distinct and impressive medals that I have proudly earned from my 4 remarkable Monte Carlo victories. Rafa said those Monte Carlo Rally victory medals absolutely had to go in the back.
On the beautiful waterfront in Monte Carlo, it's a cold, damp and rather chilly day that will welcome the eventual winner. Walter.
You really have to wonder how the 16mm engine even fits in there. These are all truly remarkable things you never even thought were possible, that you could actually do something quite extraordinary like this. But as I said, the result is all the more beautiful.
Yes, most definitely. And these really are the authentic original Sego plaques from the historic Monte Carlo Rally.
You only truly get the plaque if you reach the final finish and successfully achieve it. And the correct years from the 4 victories too. So that's definitely something quite special indeed, and it fits absolutely perfectly on there, you know.
Yes, exactly. I think I'll just open up the engine cover in the back for a moment. Right, just a little bit more indeed.
Of course, it's already filled with a 6-cylinder engine and everything that goes with it. So I made the air filter especially so that it would even fit in there. These are all tasks that in the end add up to 20 years of work. Yes.
You can clearly see just how much effort it truly took to fit such a truly huge engine into such a remarkably small body indeed. Here we have a 356B Roadster. B Roadster is the
base model. Back then there was a 60 horsepower version, then a 75 horsepower one, and now this particular model has 4 times the power. But on the other hand, I would genuinely expect that the engine would just play around with this little car and last forever.
For example, what is the curb weight of this vehicle?
Between 1,000 and 1,100 kilos. I can't say the exact weight, but it's still in a range where if you look at cars today, even a regular car like a Golf already weighs about 1,500 kilos. So this is still a lightweight. And these are all features that, of course, on the other hand, are actually quite good for the environment. The lighter the car, the less energy you need to move it. Do you understand that? And then a car that's 40 or 50 years old, then you can really start talking about sustainability. Exactly, we don't need a new one every 5 years, not throwing it away after 10 years. Exactly, so that's already something quite significant. And if we might be lucky enough that our politicians truly realize that synthetic fuel would indeed be the very best way to do something truly impactful for the environment, so that we can keep driving our beloved old cars without releasing any more harmful emissions into the world, then we'll be over the worst of it.
Definitely, I can only agree with you on that, Walter. What do you think about that? Originally, the 3-liter engine had 260 horsepower.
But with a different charger.
A different
turbocharger, we've got the output up to about 310 horsepower. At the same time, there's the advantage that the power even comes in a bit earlier. Okay, of course it was. In 1976, when the powerful 3-liter turbo engine initially came out, there was not much prior experience or extensive knowledge about turbochargers yet. Since that time, a great deal has been thoroughly learned, and accordingly, the throttle response of these early engines was still a little bit sluggish and somewhat delayed. You'd step on the gas, count to 21, 22, and only then would the power kick in, and that, of course, was the dangerous part. On a wet road in a curve, people would straighten the wheel, hit the gas, and think nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden the hammer would hit from behind. But thanks to the turbocharger, they were actually able to improve that, so the power would come in a bit earlier.
Okay. And actually, with the 3-liter engine, it originally had a 4-speed gearbox, but here we now have a more modern 5-speed gearbox. With the 4-speed gearbox, people always said the rev range was a bit tricky to drive.
You were always in a gear that didn't quite fit. Second gear was too short, third was too long. Of course, that's much better with the 5-speed because the spacing, the difference when you shift is much smaller. So here you always have the right gear.
Okay, and is that from the 3.2-liter gearbox, 915 G50 gearbox? Yes, that's...
Of course, from that particular era, so I can't really say it's a 915 gearbox, but those were indeed available, and it shifts super smoothly. For me, that's actually even nicer than the 4-speed with the thin shift lever, which always felt a bit off. The car just feels right. You always have to guide it properly. It fits wonderfully. Super. The braking system is absolutely perfect. It truly works exceptionally well with the car, especially when considering its significant weight. And yes, I honestly have to say I genuinely can't think of any significant reason or particular disadvantage, like for example, that it pulls a little bit more with the wheel compared to another convertible where you might have a side window. Of course, that's quite obvious. You don't have a wind deflector yet, but adding one would completely ruin the overall aesthetic look of the car. It just simply doesn't belong there at all. Exactly, that's precisely.
Not, it has open. You have to put little jacket.
And just pull on a scarf, then you're good to go.
Exactly. Otherwise, we can simply go inside, sit down right in the front, and then take a good look at the interior together.
If you look at the dashboard, when you get into a modern contemporary car today, everything is so incredibly overloaded, you just get easily distracted. But this is wonderfully simple and quite straightforward and has exactly what you truly need clearly in view. That's precisely how it should be. None of those unnecessary gimmicks that just distract you completely from driving. Here I have my tachometer. I can see everything at a glance. I don't have to search around or press a button. Everything fits. We don't need anything more if we want to have fun. Everything else is just unnecessary frills that only distract you while driving.
Our community, we once posted a video of a car and many people were surprised because in the 356 the key is usually always on the left side of the steering wheel. And in this one we now have it on the right side. Where does that come from?
With the first cars it was like that. And the classic Roadster always had it positioned on the right side. There are indeed 1,000 fascinating stories about precisely why the ignition key is traditionally placed on the left in a Porsche. The very best one, I truly think, is that if it's located on the left, you simply need much shorter electrical cables to effectively start the car. They saved every gram on the car. Why it used to be located here in the very first one, I truly can't answer right now. But as I have said, that's a very typical feature of an early Spitzler or Roadster is that the ignition key is on the right-hand side.
Here we also have your signature nicely on it, showing that we underlined taking out the little tube. Just briefly about the instruments, they are really something special too.
The design is like the old one, but they're newly made. The speedometer goes up to 300. On the left we have a combination instrument, which I think is really great. We have oil pressure, oil level, oil temperature and fuel gauge all in one, and it's all compact. So it's just fantastic. Instead of having to manage 10 separate instruments, I just need to glance at this single display and I can effectively keep everything under complete control with one quick look. Everything fits, the size of the steering wheel is just right. Even I, with my height, can actually sit comfortably, which is also very important and something that's rare in modern cars. When I brake, I can also blip the throttle when downshifting. These are things that are extremely important to me so that I really feel comfortable in the car. We have all of that here. The gear lever is nice and compact, perfect for shifting. So these are all things that make you feel comfortable right away.
They really made sure everything looks just right too.
Yes, that's the red leather and the painted dashboard. I also think that's something really special. Nowadays it's just some plastic thing stuck in the front, but here it's the truly authentic real deal.
That's real quality. With the steering wheel we have a
356. The rim is from the 11. But the 56 is just the absolutely perfect size, not too big, not too small. It fits perfectly and precisely. We have the horn ring in the middle, and honestly, you don't need more than that. Here's the turn signal lever and the other.
It really is.
Kiko Loris, like you find in all modern cars.
Walter, can you just tell us again, what were your emotions when you really drove the car alone for the very first time?
Well, of course, I approached it cautiously and set off. Okay. You're sitting in the car, and even though it's a bit bigger, you don't even notice that when you're driving. That's just natural. You drive along barely pressing the gas pedal and you think, well, it drives just like a 356. And then you carefully give it some gas, you get up to about 3, 3, 2, and suddenly there's this invisible hand that pushes you from behind and you surge forward. And that's what it tells you. It's actually even better than the original car from back in the day when there was no power left. I get precisely the very same feeling when I drive, from the steering, the very way I sit, but now I truly have the absolute power to move forward whenever I want to.
Now, it might be interesting for our viewers if we briefly start the engine, because the sound of the VW is really unique. I've never heard anything like it before.
At the latest, when you start the engine, so when the car is just sitting somewhere, it already has a certain fascination, but as soon as you start it, everyone is left standing there with their mouths open, because you just hear that typical turbo six-cylinder sound that this car has. We'll take another look. I hope you connected the battery.
Amalfi, a beautiful coastal town in Italy.
It starts immediately, runs immediately. And it has a completely different sound than the four-cylinder. And it's also amazing how quietly it runs. The switch.
Right.
Yeah. It's simply a truly confidence-inspiring sensation, this remarkable sound. It's just a playful and effortless toy for the engine to enjoy.
What kind of exhaust did you install on the vehicle?
Yes, that wasn't so easy either. We also had to fit the exhaust in next to the six-cylinder. Mr. Röhrle spent a long time tinkering with that as well. We didn't want a car that stands out, that makes a huge racket. A serious, sonorous tone. We truly managed that quite well.
Definitely an incredible sound. Amazing.
The way the car drives, you immediately have confidence in it.
And it really feels as if the car has never been any different. Well,
that's true. That's right. All I can say is, I truly envy the person who will one day very own this car.
Thank you, Walter. Let's step outside for a moment. Yes, Walter, you have a very long and distinguished history with Porsche. You were also involved in the development of the Carrera GT, among other significant things. How would you personally classify the Roll Roadster? Or is there anything comparable in terms of driving experience?
No, there certainly isn't. This car is truly one of a kind. You can't compare it to anything else. Even the engine performance is, of course, like that of a turbo. But I think what's special is there are many cars, but now there's only one car like this. So for someone who says, I want something special, but I still don't want to compromise on everyday usability. The production model is, after all, built thousands of times over. And that's truly the beauty of it. You have an absolutely unique one-off prototype that exists only once, but with technology that's completely standard, that's perfectly suitable for everyday use. And I think that's precisely what's so special about this particular car. It is truly unique, but still not overly complicated, and simply just a lot of fun to drive.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Walter. Do you have any final thoughts for our viewers? Anything else you can say about the Roll Roadster? Well, basically,
I have to say the viewers really have to be incredibly lucky to ever see this magnificent car in their entire lifetime, because there's truly only one. So you really have to be in precisely the right place at the right time to catch a fleeting glimpse when this exceptional car is out on the open road.
Exactly. Maybe you can come by and visit us sometime. Right now, it's with us. Walter, I want to sincerely thank you for sharing your impressions. It was truly fascinating to learn about the creation of the vehicle and also the technology behind it. You can really tell that a lot of dedication and attention to detail and also an incredible amount of effort went into the car.
That's why I truly wish you find the right buyer, someone who genuinely deserves to own this car.
I'm very confident that we will find a truly worthy new owner for the Roll Roadster. Thank you very much, Walter.
All the best.